looking at the halting of USAID programs because funding would not be released to them until they've actually conducted a review of ongoing programs and awards. Yes, some projects awarded to certain agencies to continue, and they want to have a review of what has been done so far before continuing to release funds for these programs. Now, how long is the hot period? We do not know. No one can actually ascertain that. But we're going to look at the impact of USAID programs so far in Africa. We're starting with Africa because we're reaching you live from Lagos, Nigeria, which is a country in Africa. Doc.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump is trying to completely overhaul the will of the American foreign policies, because he feels that America is doing things that really do not concern them so much. And I think what the executive order says is that in the first instance of 90 days, all funds to assist all countries in the world except Turkey and Israel has been suspended initially for the first 90 days. And yesterday, he took a very drastic action, sending on leave 56 top executives of USAID, because he has an inkling that some of them are willing to sabotage the efforts of the government to ensure that that executive order is not standing. So freezing the aid of America to other parts of the world, I think is part of the whole agenda of redirecting the posturing of America on foreign policy issues. And like I've always said on this table, foreign policy is always an extension of a nation's domestic policy. What Donald Trump is concerned, and he has stated that unequivocally throughout the campaign, is the fact that it's first and foremost America for the Americans. And then, of course, when America is doing well, they can extend their prosperity to other parts of the world. But they don't want to see America that is funding so much crisis elsewhere in the world and is bleeding internally at home. And I think, for me, it's a wise move, if you will ask me, because he has talked about America fighting so many wars in so many areas, and of course, this money is moving into this environment, even including aid to Ukraine, so that we can stop the bleeding that NATO has caused the entire globe in terms of instigating that war between Russia and Ukraine, which was, of course, in my view, unnecessary. People talk about the excesses of Russia, but I think that negotiation could have solved that. Like Donald Trump has said at the opportune time, that if we were still in power, that war would not have happened in the first place, because he would have been able to put Putin down to a negotiation table where that war could not have happened. Because as I always say, there's this adage that Georgia is better than war. And when war happened, like Blessing alluded to, the elephants fighting, the grass is suffering. And in this regard, African countries and all the third world countries are the grass that are suffering the consequences of these actions of the U.S.
For a continent that just in 2021 alone received approximately about $7.8 billion allocation from USAID initiatives in Africa, what would be the direct impact of this fund halt?
I understand what Mr. Donald Trump is trying to do. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I think that he may be, and I use the word may quite deliberately, he may be going in the right direction with regards to safeguarding the interest, excuse me, of Americans and America as we know it, MAGA, make America great again. But besides all of that, the implications will be far-reaching. There'll be some very strong second-order effect from all of this. I mean, I can understand if he says, after so-and-so time, let's halt, aid, aid, and then shore up America's interest first before putting monies in places that you don't even know how they're going to be properly utilized.
But wouldn't that be giving some sensitization to the thief before you catch a thief? Let's assume there's a thief to catch here.
I'm talking about the ones that are ongoing at the moment. You reckon he's put a stop work order on the ongoing ones or the existing ones, and I think that would be that is a bit too draconian. Why? Because aid to places that are vulnerable, whether it's Ukraine, given the advent of the war, or whether it's Africa, which time and again always has something that it's needing aid for. Let's talk about Nigeria. Let's talk about the other Sahel countries that are war-torn. Let's talk about North American and South American countries as well that have some level of conflict there. So there is one aid or the other that is needed by all of the aforementioned, and a lot of them are ongoing. They are existing. Whether it is given to nations or given to specific humanitarian organizations or specific non-profit organizations, as it were. These things are now listen, I'm going to say this, that it's understandable if he says he doesn't know what they're being used for, or let me rephrase that, he doesn't know if they are properly used or if they're being properly utilized for the purposes which they were taken for. I can understand that. However, just to play devil's advocates in some regard, the people who've gotten these funds, they got them for a reason. Let's assume that we want to, play foregons, yes, and let that one go, let the existing ones go. I can understand if he says after another, say maybe 6 months in office, or after 3 months in office, or after a year in office, now this is answering what you'd ask, we are going to stop, or better still, because we know that some of these grants have expiration dates in some cases. So after the current window of the grants, when they expire, when they reach their expiration, we then discontinue and focus on America. But to discontinue them immediately or to freeze ongoing work with regards to these, there's some people who have already started speaking, especially for healthcare. People in the healthcare sector globally have said that, listen, this is going to be problematic. We're talking about vaccines, we're talking about drugs, we're talking about aid, humanitarian workers, or if you like, aid providers, upkeep, and all of that. So if you take these things away, what then happens to the purpose for which they were, earmarked for in the first place? So I'm thinking, first of all, I'm going to refer to what I said earlier. I understand what Mr. Trump is trying to do, and to some extent, I would say that I support what he's trying to do. However, in the moment, to completely yank it off, in the moment, to completely freeze the operations, I would say that it's a little too draconian. So
yeah, but
want to step it down a little.
I also think that we must also play the devil's advocate here, especially with regards to the conspiracy theory of the impact of aid in fueling crisis in West Africa. I don't know if you had the opportunity to read this book by Dambisa Moyo, Dead Aid, How Aid Has Not Worked in the Third World, and especially African countries. That almost all the crises that you see around that's brewing in Africa, they're actually connected with this aid. And that's why I say, for me, the way I see the order, and I'm not seeing anybody is going to be hurt. We're talking about 90 days cycle here, which is just about 3 months, that the president needs to overhaul. And he has said this even in his inaugural address, that what he wants to do is to build the power base of America so that they can use the American strength to bring peace upon the world. And he said right there that there were unnecessary wars that Americans are involved in that they should not have be involved in. And so he is intending to stop those wars. Those that are about to start, he will ensure that they don't start at all. And where America is deeply involved, he will ensure that America get out of it, so that the world can know peace. And I think, for me, it is that thinking of looking inward, because there are a lot of things that we must begin to look at, and that's why you hear Elon Musk talk about the bureaucracy, who has much power in manipulating the American relations to its detriment. Don't forget, some time ago last week we talked about the Wuhan virus and the impact of American research in that laboratory, which up to today nobody has actually brought out to the open to see what really happened. So I feel that what Trump is trying to do, now that the secretary is up, to say, where is this aid actually going? What is the purpose of this aid? How does it solve the problem of these people? Then you can review the entire process and know those who genuinely need support from America, separated from those that when you are falling and stoking trouble in the world that may not really be adding value to the welfare and the well-being of the American citizens. So I feel it is American first policy, and I think like all hands have to the cross and see who is going to really be the victim of this suspension, whose aid processes are going to be reviewed. But Donald Trump is a hardliner, and he is strong about what he wants to do. And without missing what yesterday morning, he has sent on leave about 56 staff of USAID and said, you rest and let us do what we want to do, so that you don't become the judge in your case. So I think these are issues that are internal to America, and to that extent, he's elected to rule America and not to govern the entire globe.
Yes, I'll respond to what David and Doc said by saying, well, first of all, America has done quite enough. Not to say that they should stop doing the good work they've been doing with the USAID programs, but they've done quite well with different aid programs that they have, not just in Africa, but to other parts of the world. Now, if the president is coming to say it's America first, now even the Secretary of State was saying that America's spendings outside America will be only if they make sense for America being stronger, more prosperous at the end of the day. So it goes further to reiterate the point of Donald Trump that it's about America first. Now, that being said, if we look at the aid programs of the US, they're quite many and quite they branch out to different parts of the world, not just in Africa alone. So over the years, there's been reason for someone like Trump, and I believe some Americans, to doubt the efficiency of this project, to doubt whether or not these monies actually go to where they should go, and whether some of these programs are still relevant. Now, for a long time, several of their programs have been ongoing. Perhaps it's time to do a review, an assessment of the impact of these programs, and there's some of them that need to be discontinued. Maybe they've already their impact has already been felt, so there isn't much need anymore to continue them. So there are quite a number of them. If we look at some of the aid programs that the USAID have been involved with. So there's the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which has been out there to combat HIV and AIDS. It's been on since 2003. There's a Feed the Future, there's been Power Africa, Young African Leaders Initiative to provide mentorship, and a host of others. So if you look at this, that a country that doesn't really have this challenge is pumping money into it. The countries that are benefiting from this, what have they been doing over the years to provide support to take it off from where the US has, perhaps stopped? So there seems to be some entitling if we're thinking that, if the US pulls out funds, these regions are going to suffer. These areas in Africa perhaps are going to suffer. I think it's time for Africa to begin to sponsor its own. Yes, receiving aid is good, but I think that the spoon feeding or bottle feeding, as he puts it, has been going on for too long. It is time for Africa to brace up and begin to attend to its own needs. When they're done with the review, programs that the U.S. considers as necessary will continue. The ones that they feel as overstayed their relevance might be scrapped. Now, if the countries that are affected fail, there is a need to continue, then they should begin to plan for them. But I think that they've done enough for the rest of the world to take it off.
African leaders should read Dambisa Moyo, and I think it's instructive why aid is not working, and there are better ways for financing development among developing nations. And it's quite instructive to see that Blessing said it. So much money has passed through this panel. Now, whether we receive them in cash or kind, we can't tell. Because why this aid is coming is also telling you how you're going to spend it. And so your brain is completely taken off your head and using somebody else's brain to think. And so you cannot see your problem really visually. So I think Africa needs to put their brain back into their head and think about positive ways to drive national development. And that is the way to go as far as I'm concerned.
I agree 100%, like I said earlier, which saw me, first of all, agreeing with what Mr. Trump wants to do. But, and yes, again, to buttress what you both have said, I'm not a very big fan of the cap in hand, method, which is typical or very characteristic of African leaders. And even to circle back home here, let me digress a little bit. It's tangential anyway, but for want of a much better example, I'll use this one. Back here at home in Nigeria, you have the average governor, I'm not going to mention the region, going cap in hand to the federal for allocations. They have been so dependent on that since time immemorial that they almost don't know how to, by themselves, on their own, with their kitchen cabinets, generate revenue internally in their different states. And to worsen the situation, they commandeer, that's the word, commandeer the monies for local government. Thankfully, we now have the act in full effect. That's the local government autonomy, yes, or financial autonomy, as he were. So they do all of these things, and they don't see the need, if you like, to look inward. So it's safe to conclude that a lot of these guys are bereft of the intellectual capacity, if you like, and perhaps the willpower, the political will, beg your pardon, to make things happen in their homes. So relating it back to what we're talking about. So it's made many African leaders, many Middle Eastern leaders, many Asian leaders, many South American leaders, very, very dependent on the likes of, the global financial institutions, talking about the World Bank, talking about the IMF, and the rest of them. And then, of course, with regards to aid, countries like America and even Germany as well, who have been quite big on, doling out aids, as he were, for sundry causes. So I'm very well in support of African leaders and other other countries or other regions of the world that you might refer to as indigent, to step up, wake up, smell the coffee, and put measures in place for them to be able to, by themselves and for themselves, generate what they need to grow their economy, or generate what they need to survive, as the case may be. And this is cross-sectoral, not just, for a particular reason, or not just for a particular sector, as he were. So it's in order, what Mr. Trump is trying to do. Again, I reiterate. But, as I said, let the, time required for the current, functional aids elapse before you start to, enforce what you want to do, which is fantastic. I'm going to say that again. It's fantastic what he wants to do, but let him consider the immediate implications. That's all I'm saying.
I think the stop work order is necessary, because if you're carrying out an investigation, if you do not put a halt to the work that is ongoing, if the work continues, those carrying out the work may interfere with the investigation, and it may be hard to determine what actually is ongoing. So a stop work order and even the suspension of some in the authority is necessary at the moment. It's just for a 3-month period. So after that, there should be a report of what the investigative panel, so to speak, has come up with and what would be the decision going forward. I think this will also be good for regarding transparency in the operations of NGOs in Africa. So because the fund most times comes from abroad or comes from international agencies, people do not really ask questions about how these NGOs are using the funds or what goes on. People are springing up NGOs, springing up foundations day by day. Is it really born out of genuine concern for the indigent in the society, or it's now the new business in town and everybody wants to cash out? But if these funds are coming from within, perhaps those who are donating to these agencies, to these NGOs, will begin to ask the right questions to say, let's see your books, let's see what exactly you're doing. So you do not get money to feed 10,000 and you feed 1,000, you give us pictures, you provide documentation to say you're doing a whole lot. Meanwhile, the owners of the NGOs are building houses, becoming richer, we still have more of the poor in the society. So I think at the end of the day, it might just be good for Africa.
Well, I think it will be a good thing for Africa to actually become responsible as an adult after 60 years of independence. Like you said, we cannot continue to depend on a white man feeding bottle. We must be able to create our food and then, of course, create our economy that is sustainable. That's my view. We should not be afraid of whatever Donald Trump is doing. He's the president of their country, and then, of course, we have presidents in Africa. We should rise up to the occasions.
Before we call it a day on the show, let's just take a look at some of the comments that have been shared on our YouTube channel. So, this one says, we are not curbing inflation. Inflation is curbing productivity with the help of CBN's policies under the supervision of Bretton Woods institutions. So that's a contribution to the advisor of the World Bank to CBN to ensure that they implement inflation control measures this year. And someone called out Doctor, saying Dr. Idahosa said, when I was in school, and it says Wikipedia needs updating. I think this person is just trying to trouble you. It came from the Gov. What do you mean by Wikipedia needs to be updated? Well, maybe the Gov can tell us more, but it's good to know that he's found new love for you, and he likes to trouble you sometimes with his comments. Remember when he was saying what you're talking about, where everything happens fairly and is done right, and then he said that can only happen in heaven.
Yes, yes.
Well, that's been a show today. If you've enjoyed it, feel free to share. Post a comment on a social media platform as Sook News TV on Facebook, Instagram, X. You can also watch the show from beginning if you missed it. Well, it's been a wonderful one today. When you go over to our YouTube channel, Sook News TV, you can have the full show and also leave a comment. We'd like to hear from you. I am Blessing Eichie. You know that the front burners will light up again tomorrow, 7 a.m. West African time. From David Chiedu.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for watching again today. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.
And Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze.
It was our honor having you stick with us. We will do it again tomorrow.
There will be wonderful programs for your viewing pleasure here on Sook News TV. Be sure to stay with the channel.